The most fundamental right in a democracy is some ability to control how we are governed. I want to point out that our current democratic infrastructure, our political process, what we call representative democracy, is mostly 18th century technology, a time before electricity, when it took a week to get a single message from one city to the next. And yet it has served us relatively well for hundreds of years. But it's also showing signs of not necessarily keeping up, especially with the scale of how large our democracies have become. There are many issues. Perhaps one way to sum it up is that we're faced with widespread problems of underrepresentation. Now, this room might be an exception. It's an honor to be here with so many leaders and serious influencers, and I really hope you'll lend me your expertise. But outside this room, not everyone feels like they have a seat at the table. Across classes, across races, across genders, and across countries, a vast number of people say they feel they don't have much of a voice. Distrust in our institutions is growing worldwide. So what do we do? One response might be to pretend like it's not a problem and bury our heads in the sand. But we must not do that. Ignoring the issues of underrepresentation creates a disconnect and mistrust between government and voters. That's fertile ground for authoritarians who'd use this distrust to tear down existing institutions, to gain great unchecked power, and that usually ends in disaster. So in the face of this, a situation ripe for change, I hate to say it, but with the specter of fascism beginning to haunt the world once again, how might we go in the opposite direction? How do we reinvigorate modern democracy? What if instead of centralizing authority into the hands of a few strongmen, we expanded political power to many, many more voices? So now I want to talk to you about a concept called liquid democracy. Just curious, could we get a quick show of hands? How many people in the room already know what this term means? Less than 1%. Very, very small. It's a bit of a futuristic idea. In no way the only solution, but it's worth paying attention to. The goal of liquid democracy is a representative government that's more accountable, more authentic, more transparent, and more inclusive for participation. One way to think about it is democracy 3.0. Why 3.0? What about 2.0? Well, version 1 was direct democracy, like ancient Athens, thousands of years ago. 2.0 is what we do now, electing full-time representatives, like to a Congress or Parliament. Now, liquid democracy is version 3. It's only possible with modern technology. It takes the ideas of versions 1 and 2 and combines them together to get the best of both worlds. What this means is it's still as easy for the average person as what we do right now, maybe easier. And it can be just as authentic and legitimate as giving everyone a direct vote, like in a referendum. And maybe it can also lead to better outcomes, a smarter democracy, one that works for more people. Okay, so how does all this work specifically? Just to be clear, this is only focused on the legislative branch of government. Assume the judicial and executive branches remain the same, separations of power. So liquid democracy still has representation and is actually backwards compatible with the current system, but it also lets you represent yourself if you want. As in, using software on your phone or on a computer, you can see every individual piece of legislation being debated. And if you want, you can vote on it directly, for or against, overriding your representative. Now, I really wanted to keep this talk at a high level because of the time, but a number of people insisted I touch on hacking, especially with such a cybersecurity focus in the room, and it's a very important topic, near and dear to my own heart, as someone who's been building and admittedly breaking into digital systems since I was 10 years old. And so I want to share that our team has developed a new cryptographic proof of vote system that offers similar integrity and immutability guarantees as a blockchain with much, much better performance and privacy. In other words, it lets individuals verify that their votes weren't tampered with. We've written about this online and always invite critiques from the security community. Of course, we want this all to be as resilient as possible. Okay, so that was a brief interlude about cybersecurity. Now back to liquid democracy itself. On top of direct voting, in liquid democracy, you can pick entirely new representatives. In fact, representation becomes trust-based and personal. Instead of holding an election to pick just a single person to speak on behalf of a million people, you as an individual can pick a personal delegate. That means that for each and every piece of legislation that you don't vote on directly, the system automatically adopts your designated delegate's position. It's like a personal proxy. It's as easy as subscribing to someone on YouTube or following someone on Twitter or Instagram, but based on trust rather than interest. Importantly, you can take back your delegation at any time. This creates much stronger accountability. Representatives no longer get away with making hollow promises when campaigning for your vote and then breaking those promises without facing any consequences for years while everyone waits for the next election. And unlike our current system, where our elected legislators are supposed to represent us on every issue, one size fits all, liquid democracy delegation can be topic by topic. You could choose a science delegate and a different economics delegate and a different foreign policy delegate, and so on. Now there's one final piece to the puzzle, and it's pretty significant. Liquid democracy delegation is transitive. What this means is if you don't vote on a bill and your delegate doesn't vote either, then the system checks their delegate and then that person's delegate, and so on, until it reaches the voter. And this is a really big deal. For one thing, it means that your delegate doesn't need to make this your full-time job. You just want them to be a little more knowledgeable than you, hopefully, and know someone a little more knowledgeable than them. And this is also sort of where the fluidity comes in, where it gets the name liquid democracy, because people accumulate and transfer voting power in real time. I want to show you a visualization of what this looks like. Picture's worth 1,000 words. This is a very simple top-down view of a liquid democracy voting on a single issue. Each circle represents one voter. The colors are for and against. The more vivid colors are direct voters. The faded ones have adopted their position from their delegate. They're not directly participating. The arrows show your delegation. This is just an example. A liquid democracy network is built on top of these individual trust relationships. Lots and lots of signals of trust. Much tighter connections among people who actually know each other instead of the 1 to a million ratio in the systems we use now to elect effectively strangers to represent us. And so what this means is our democracy can be expert-driven, but it's an organic process of finding the experts. And these experts, with power more spread out and feedback on performance far more immediate, have far fewer incentives to misbehave. You might also notice that this structure resembles the PageRank algorithm that powers Google, which models the hyperlinks from one web page to another in order to organically figure out which pages have the most authority. It's a relatively simple idea that is world-changingly powerful, able to find the proverbial needle in the haystack, even across trillions of options. Now, this vision is not only possible, it is currently interoperable. We can implement it with existing technology and even without any legal changes. New candidates can run for office, what we call liquid democracy candidates in the existing electoral system. But they pledge to vote on each bill according to their local liquid democracy. They commit to being a vessel for the platform. Then citizens, the electorate, have the option to upgrade their individual districts one by one when they're ready. Once in office, they're able to direct these remote-controlled politicians from their phones or computer. Importantly, this means we can test out the system in a safer, organic, grassroots way, rather than trying to change everything from the top down all at once. I didn't invent the term liquid democracy. It's actually been written about for over 20 years. There's a lot of people thinking about it in all different countries around the world. And candidates like this have already been elected with similar-ish platforms in places like Germany, Austria, Denmark. My organization has built a liquid democracy platform for the city of San Francisco. In our private testing, the feedback has been incredibly positive. People say it's changed their relationship to the city. We're now working on a version for the United States Congress. There's so much more I wish I could talk about, but I'm running out of time. 27 seconds. So I want to leave you with this. Think about the year 2030, a little more than a decade away. If we want to have healthy communities on the local, national, and international level, we have to invest today in forward-thinking civic institutions. We can make this a possibility. We can make it not only real, but easy for public and private organizations to adopt. With that said, we are looking for more advisors with practical, real-world experience who are ready to make this vision a reality. If this piques your interest, please do reach out.